There's been no shortage of video game fads over the years that have left a sour taste in my mouth. The emphasis on quantity over quality in open worlds, the indie scene being inundated with trend chasers, a general lack of risk-taking in the AAA space, and the collective fever dream of the mid-aughts Brown era are just a few that come to mind. But the one issue that keeps popping up more and more frequently is the whole pre-order the Deluxe Edition and play the game 3 days early thing. In just the past few weeks, it feels like every single big AAA game has included some form of this as part of its marketing. Forza Horizon 6's Deluxe Edition let you play 4 days early. LEGO Batman's gave you 3 days. Saros had a 2-day special, and 007 First Light offered you a 24-hour license to kill before the general population. I honestly don't want to sound like an old man yelling at clouds, but what the fuck are we doing here? First off, the verbiage around this trend is misleading. Alinea Analytics found that 1.7 million people opted into the premium version of Forza to play it early. With numbers like that, it's clear that you're not paying for early access to these games. You're paying to play the game at release, while others who want to stick to the retail price are forced to watch from a distance. I guess this is the gaming equivalent of paying for priority boarding on a flight while the rest of us plebs polish off our 8 AM beers and $20 egg sandwiches because airports are bizarre, lawless pocket universes where all good sense gets thrown out the window. Also, early access is already a codified term in gaming, and this is more like a pay-to-play scenario, so the wording just makes the whole thing kind of confusing. While this trend is becoming more and more commonplace, it's certainly not new. Heavy hitters like Starfield, Lies of P, Hogwarts Legacy, Death Stranding 2, Star Wars Outlaws, and Mortal Kombat 11 all launched with similar incentives to fork over some extra dosh in exchange for a few days of early access. These deluxe editions are often sweetened by the inclusion of digital art books or soundtracks, and some forgettable cosmetics, equipment, or upgrade materials being tossed in, but it's clear that those are just garnishes to the early access meat and potatoes. Older PC gamers out there might be having PTSD flashbacks of scouring services like File Planet for games, demos, patches, and mods, and then being placed in a lengthy download queue that you could bypass by paying to subscribe to that service. Honestly, as shit as that was, there is a kind of nostalgia I hold for the friction of the early days of the internet that just can't be replicated in 2026. But in truth, I get why people opt into these pay-to-play scenarios. Maybe you've been waiting years for a big AAA Bond game or the next Bethesda RPG. Maybe you happen to have a 3-day weekend and the thought of filling it by racing this Temu Gundam across Tokyo in Forza Horizon 6 is too tempting to pass up. Maybe $10 is your sweet spot for an impulse buy. Or maybe it's your job to cover these games on podcast streams and videos like this, and having a few days of lead time saves you from having to work over the weekend, which means you can go outside with some pals and drink a few small beers. Regardless of the reason, it's clear that it's working. Outside of Nintendo, it's hard to name a major publisher who hasn't leaned into this recently. Xbox, PlayStation, Warner Bros., Ubisoft, Konami, and EA have all released games this way over the past few years. And one look at those Forza Horizon 6 stats, and it's clear that this trend is ostensibly a free money exploit for these publishers, so why the hell wouldn't they do it? Well, ethically, it preys on the most hardcore fans and feeds into an unhealthy sense of FOMO that, like it or not, most of us are susceptible to in one form or another. It fragments the conversation surrounding the games, with these staggered start times throwing off any sort of collective pace the community might be proceeding at. Also, selfishly, this kind of early access fuels the problem of entire playthroughs being uploaded to YouTube before their official release, with whole-ass spoilers right there in the thumbnail. I can avoid social media pretty easily, but it's kind of hard to avoid YouTube in 2026. Where else am I going to watch WCW highlights, full playthroughs of Encarta 96's Mind Maze, and the Cronenbergian body horror of Nintendo's Muppet-fueled E3 2015 showcase? If I had to put some kind of positive spin on this trend, I guess it would be that this pay-to-play model might help keep the lights on at studios I enjoy like Playground and IO Interactive during an extremely tumultuous time in the industry, which I'm all for. It just sucks that the onus is being passed on to the consumer instead of being dealt with by the C-suite fancies who make the decisions, reap the rewards, and never suffer the consequences. Same as it ever was, and as always, r/patient gamer stays winning. If you can inoculate yourself from the FOMO, then waiting a beat before you jump into a big new game is never a bad choice. Prices go down, bugs are ironed out, and quality of life changes are often added. Just look at how different of a game Crimson Desert was a few weeks after launch compared to the pre-release review period. I think this trend particularly rubs me the wrong way at this moment because it's just one part of the overall rising price of gaming as a hobby. AAA games are routinely $70 or $80 at launch before you even include these deluxe editions. All three of the major consoles recently saw mid-generation price increases, which I cannot recall ever happening before in my decades of gaming. And with the recent news that Valve is increasing the price of the Steam Deck to close to $1,000, it feels like things are going to get much worse before they get any better. Sure, the free-to-play and mobile markets continue to boom across the globe, but those just aren't the kinds of experiences I'm interested in, and I imagine a lot of you feel similarly. While this video has mostly been a wet blanket of me just venting, a bright spot in all of this are the actual games themselves. Saros, Forza, Lego Batman, and 007 don't just share these early access shenanigans, they're also pretty goddamn good. And the indie scene is continually delivering bangers of all flavors. The excellent Mina the Hollower recently released to a $20 price point for a 20-hour campaign brimming with tons of challenge, replayability, and a whole suite of modifiers to keep you entertained long after you roll credits. In a world of AAA publishers squeezing every last dime out of the consumer, let's make an attempt to be more like Yacht Club games. This is one of those problems with no easy solution. Well, that's not quite true. The easy answer would be for everyone to band together, vote with their wallets, and refuse to engage with these deluxe editions going forward. But given that we can't agree on a definition of indie game, I can't envision us collectively unifying against any issue like this. But maybe the next time you feel tempted to shell out some extra money for a bit of early access, you can instead spend that time stuck in the backrooms of the Mind Maze.